Program Manager for NASA's Commercial Crew Program, Dina Cantella, Deputy Manager of NASA's International Space Station Program, Andreas Muggenson, Human Exploration Group Leader for the European Space Agency, and joining us remotely is William Gerstenmaier, Vice President for Build and Flight Reliability with SpaceX. Crew-12 is scheduled to lift off no earlier than February 12th. That is an adjustment after an earlier weather scrub called today due to poor conditions in the ascent corridor. We're going to talk about that more in just a little bit. For those joining on the line, press star 1 to join the question queue. We will be taking questions from here in the room and from call-in. And we will start with Steve Stitch. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Steve, and thank you for your interest in Commercial Crew and ISS program and human spaceflight. Had the opportunity to be out at the launch countdown clock there at the 39A press site this morning, and it was great to be out there with our team. We always have a little ceremony where we raise the flag for the mission, and we looked over at pad 39B, and it's awesome to see the Artemis vehicle out at the pad, and then you look over at pad 40, and we see Falcon 9 with Dragon for our Crew-12. And so it's really an exciting time to have two different space launch systems set up to launch crews into space. We are really looking forward to Crew-12 when we get the right weather to launch Jessica, Jack, Sophie, and Andre into space. As Steve said, today we adjusted our launch date to no later than February the 12th, 5:30 a.m. Eastern launch time. When we had our weather briefing this morning, we were looking at both the launch site weather, which looks very favorable for the entire week here at the Kennedy Space Center, but we have abort weather up the East Coast where should something happen to the launch vehicle, we can separate Dragon and then land safely. When we did that, we could see high winds along a lot of that track, up to 24 to 28 knots, especially in what we would consider our higher risk areas, the staging area. There's a low pressure system that's kind of moving in and setting over that staging area, and it's driving those winds up, and we can really see the models agreeing over the last 24 hours. So that is the reason why we delayed the launch for one day. We'll have a meeting again tomorrow morning to go look at the weather again. I would say right now, Thursday the 12th doesn't look great as well. That low pressure system will likely be there and dominate our weather, so we'll have our weather briefing in the morning and then make a call as well. The winds there are a little lower, but still quite above our limits. So the good news is we have good opportunities for the remainder of the week, and so we'll go ahead and launch when we're ready, when we have favorable weather. It's been a really busy time here at the Kennedy Space Center as we get ready for flight. We had our agency FRR on Friday. That went well. We talked a number of topics about the Dragon Bay 12 structures upgrade. We talked the Falcon 9 Starlink investigation. Bill will cover that a little bit more. We got through both those topics, and we proceeded into the rest of the operation. Vehicle rolled out and got out to the pad. We had a good static fire completed early Sunday morning, full duration static fire, and the engines look good. We've gone through all the data. We don't really see anything off nominal. Bill will talk about one check valve on the transfer tube that we replaced, but we adjusted the time of static fire a little bit. We talked a little bit before about how on Crew 9 we had the plume from the static fire come back over and blow onto Dragon and leave some soot deposits. So we separated the static fire. We moved it about 3 hours early to accommodate the winds, and that went really well. We know that Dragon's in good shape. Then early this morning, we got the crew out and into Dragon, did a demonstration. Kind of it's an end-to-end walkthrough of getting the crew in the vehicle, getting them strapped in and suited up. I would say that all went well. That operation did. We did have one ground server issue with comm back and forth between the ground team and Dragon. And that was resolved by swapping to a backup server on the ground. We'll go troubleshoot the primary server, but we had a little bit of a comm issue. Otherwise, I would say the vehicles are ready, the crew's ready, the ground systems are ready, and we just have to watch the weather. And it's very humbling to go look at the East Coast weather and see that it's bad, and when, especially here, we just walked in and the weather outside is so beautiful. But we'll take it step by step, walk through the weather each day, and then we'll go launch when we're ready. Again, I want to thank the ISS program, all of our teams across SpaceX and NASA for all their hard work in getting us to this point. I want to thank the FAA, the United States Space Force, the Detachment 3 and the Coast Guard as well, and all the agencies that support us. It's a huge team. And we have shown lots of agility, and we'll just take it step by step, and we'll launch when we're ready. And I'll turn it over to Dina.
All right. Well, thank you, Steve. On Friday, he mentioned that we had a flight readiness review, and from an ISS standpoint, it was very clean. We're not tracking any major issues, and we've closed out all of our open work, and we're ready for Crew-12 to come greet us on board. The crew's here already in Florida, and we're looking forward to seeing them. The next time, a lot of folks will see them, there'll be a video from ISS, and we can't wait to get them on board. If you remember, we've got Jessica Meir and Andre Fadayev have both flown to ISS before, so they're returning residents. And then we have two new flyers. We have got Jack Hathaway and Sophie Adeno. We're looking forward to having them on board as well. So, on ISS, we're not working any major problems, as I mentioned, and so there's really not an urgent need to get Crew-12 up there. We're looking forward to some extra helping hands, but we'll launch when we're ready. Nothing urgent that's pressing on us right now. Chris, Sergey, and Sergey on board ISS, they're doing great. They're in great spirits. And Chris on the U.S. Operating segment has been focused a lot on research and packing. We're trying to close out the SpaceX 33 cargo vehicle sometime in the end of February after the Crew-12 guys get there. And, the Crew-12 guys, when they get up there, they've got some great experiments. I thought I'd highlight a couple of them. One of the experiments they'll be working on has to do with plant micronutrients. And you can imagine you'd want to recycle the inedible parts of different plants and use those nutrients in the place of fertilizer, for example, to reduce your amount of fertilizer. And so we're looking at those types of nutrients for enhancing and evolving food production for eventual exploration missions. We are also working with a major pharmaceutical company on a protein crystal growth experiment for drug treatments. And we're looking at the bacteria that causes pneumonia and how that can affect heart tissue. And this is important because some patients in hospitals with pneumonia eventually develop heart disease. And so we'd like to, if we can, benefit life on Earth by trying to study that. It's a different mechanism or a different behavior, I'd say, for those bacteria in microgravity. So maybe this will teach us some things that will help life on Earth. So those are a few of the experiments while they're up there. Also, they're going to see a lot of dynamic events to go through some. I mentioned SpaceX 33 undock at the end of February. We're looking at early March for HTV X1 robotic release. So we unberth it. We'll present it to a port for a docking demonstration. It's not actually docking, but just a sensor demonstration. And then we'll release it. Again, all that's in early March. Sometime in mid-March, we are planning to release also robotically the Northrop Grumman 23 Cygnus vehicle. And the Russians are still continuing to target the mid to late March timeframe for their launch of their Progress, and no changes to that schedule from my last briefing. And the list goes on, but Northrop Grumman 24 comes up in early April. So I had mentioned a couple of spacewalks, and those had moved from the January timeframe because of the early Crew-11 return. We're looking at a good time frame for those. Maybe we have an opportunity in mid-March and early April for those, but we're continuing to refine that assessment. And then the launch and dock of this crew and that timing will help us understand how much crew time we have to prepare for those and if that timing works. So, really wanted to thank the whole team for the early Crew-11 return and then acceleration of this particular launch. Everybody's done a great job. As Steve has mentioned everyone, but I would like to thank the Commercial Crew Program, our international partnership, the SpaceX team, the other government agencies, our engineering and operations teams. A fantastic job all around. As I said, we are ready to go and ready to welcome Crew-12 on board, and looking forward to a great mission. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andy.
Well, thank you, and good morning. We at the European Space Agency are excited to be part of Crew-12. On a personal note, I'm excited, but also a little bit jealous of Andrei Fadayev. I met him on the ISS as we handed over from Crew 6 to Crew 7. And I'd love to be in his seat, of course, but the next best thing is being here today, supporting my ESA colleague, Sophie Adenauer, on her first mission to the ISS. Sophie is part of our new class of astronauts that we selected in 2022. She is the first from that class to fly to the ISS, so we are really excited to see our new generation of astronauts getting their first experience in space. In 2022, when Sophie was selected, we had more than 22,500 applicants from all over Europe, so it really shows the level of interest and fascination among young Europeans as well for what we do in space. And as I think has already been alluded to this morning, this is really an exciting time. We have Artemis 2 out on the pad as well. And I think if I'm going to highlight a couple things that Sophie will be working on during her mission, the ISS is really an incredible test bed for preparing for the future, and some of the things that she will be working on will be helping us prepare for future flights. Just to name a couple things, the European Enhanced Exploration Device is a new exercise device that Sophie will be among the first to use on the ISS. The ISS affords us an incredible amount of space for exercise. We have 3 different devices, but in the future we will likely be much more limited in size. And so this new E4D device is a combination of a rowing machine, bicycle machine, and a strength exercising device. And hopefully it'll give us new information about how to do countermeasures in space using new types of devices that are much more compact and smaller in size. Sophie will also continue the use of the European Everywhere application, which is a health monitoring tool, among other things, first flown by Thomas Pesquet. The Artemis 2 crew will also actually be using the European Everywhere app, so we're excited again to make that link between ISS and Artemis. Another interesting topic or experiment that Sophie will be working on is a new ultrasonic device that allows astronauts to do ultrasounds without support from ground. So this new system uses augmented reality and artificial intelligence to allow astronauts to do ultrasounds without remote guidance. Today on the ISS, whenever we do ultrasounds, we have remote guiders helping us. That's going to be much more difficult as we travel further into space. So again, a fantastic opportunity to use the ISS for development of future technologies. So we're really looking forward to Crew-12 and Sophie's mission on the International Space Station. This is, as always, a huge effort from everyone at the European Space Agency, and we're very proud to be part of Crew-12 and to work with NASA again. So thank you, and with those words, I'll hand over to William Gerstenmaier in Hawthorne.
Thanks, Andreas. It's my pleasure to be with you here today and get a chance to talk about Crew-12. Human spaceflight is really special for us here at SpaceX. We go above and beyond to make sure everything is ready. We're ready to support the crews. It's really a different flight for us, and we spend an extra time making sure things are really ready to go, and we're really ready to go do the mission. As Steve talked about, we completed a static fire. The rocket is ready to go, is ready to fly. We found one check valve that was a little sluggish and held back a little bit of pressure. It's on a transfer tube seal. We typically see that with static fires. We haven't done many static fires lately, but in this case, we saw that. We removed the check valve, put a new one in. We also borescoped the line. We saw a little bit of moisture in the line. That's probably indicative of what caused the problem. There's likely some ice formation that may have caused a slight pressure rise. But again, that's part of the diligence we go through to make sure everything is absolutely ready to go fly. Everything else looked really good on the rocket. This morning, we went through a dry dress with the crew to make sure they're comfortable, and our operators here in Hawthorne are ready to to interact with the crew and get the capsule closed out, get the hatch closed, go through those activities. This is only our second launch from Pad 40 with Crew, so this is a chance for us to make sure things were really ready. And that activity went extremely smooth this morning. The dry dress was very good. We're ready to go once the weather gets ready to go. As Steve talked about, we had a problem last week on Monday with a Starlink G1732 flight. It was during the third burn of the MVAC engine. It's a deorbit burn. During that burn, we were changing the chill profile to go look at a new way of essentially chilling in the engine. And it turns out through that process, we created a condition that essentially starved the GG of proper oxygen and essentially caused a problem with the engine during the deorbit burn. I really want to stress that what occurred on Starlink is unique to Starlink. We don't do 3 burns with crew missions. The first burn of the crew mission is always the same. It's fully chilled in, fully ready to go fly through in a gravity environment where there's no microgravity conditions. It's a really solid burn that occurs, and we've done that the same way for every crew mission. The second burn of the crew flights is also very standard. We didn't have to change anything. Based on what we learned from the Starlink mission, it's the same profile we use. We stay with the standard chill profile, et cetera. So again, I think we're continuing to learn. We're still continuing to kind of push the envelope to see how our hardware and systems operate. And ultimately, by pushing kind of the envelope and seeing the corners, we understand where our hardware works, where it doesn't work well. So then when it comes time to fly Crew, we can go back more to the center of the envelope. We can get that high reliability that's demanded by a crew mission. So that's what occurred on a couple of weeks ago on Monday, or a week ago on Monday. Again, a tremendous amount of effort was done to make sure we really understood the problem. There was no crossover to Crew. We went through a full investigation, developed a full fault tree, had the FAA, NASA, the Space Force were all involved with us in the investigation, and we're truly ready to fly, and there's no crossover at all to the Crew flight that's coming up. You also may have noticed, if you look over at 39A, that the crew arm is coming down. We're going to do some maintenance on some bearings on the crew arm. I think the general plan is we'll keep the crew arm on the ground after we do those repairs, but we'll be ready to put the crew arm back up again if we need to go back and launch Crew from Pad 39A. So again, you'll see that. It doesn't say we're backing away from 39A for crew flights. We'll just have it in reserve when it's needed, and we need to do this repair of the bearings on the arm. Another interesting thing is this will be the first landing at landing zone 40. So we still have landing zone 2 available to us if we need, but we're going to now land the first stage of the Falcon rocket right next to the launch pad, and that makes for easier processing for us and moves us forward, and then keeps kind of launch and landing in the same general area. So again, I think overall we're ready to go. We treat human space flight very differently than we do any other flight. We work extremely hard with all our partners, with all the team members, to really make sure we're really ready to go fly. There's no higher calling than there is to fly Crew. You know, I often say that, you know, especially with the Super Bowl and the Olympics, you think about athletics and sports. Human spaceflight is the ultimate team sport. You have to be 100% transparent about what you know, what you don't know. Share with your teammates, share with the crew, share with everyone, and make sure we're really ready to go fly. And it's an honor to be part of this team. It's an honor to represent SpaceX, and it's an honor to be with you all today. We'll look forward to your questions when they come. Back to you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We're going to start our questions here in the room. If you have called in, *1 will get you in the queue to ask a question if you wish, and *2 will let you drop out of the queue. And we will start here in the room, and we're going to start with Will Robinson-Smith from Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks so much, Will Robinson-Smith with Spaceflight Now. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. Quick one to Bill Gerstenmaier and then to Andy Mogensen. regarding how quickly 39A could come back into rotation if needed, what's the time frame if NASA calls that pad could be ready for another human spaceflight activity? And then for Andy, can you describe the mass of the workout equipment that Sophie is going to be demonstrating? Is it something that is able to fit alongside them inside Dragon, or does it need to go into the pressurized cargo area? Thanks.
In terms of 39A readiness, we'll be ready to support from 39A as soon as we can get the rocket ready to go fly and get the call up in place. So if NASA has a need, as soon as we're notified, we'll start processing the Dragon capsule, we'll start processing the Falcon vehicle. In the time frame it takes us to get Falcon and Dragon ready, we can be ready to get the pad up and operating.
And regarding the exercise, the E4D exercise device, I mean, it's too big for a capsule, but potentially for Gateway. But this really is the first step. It's quite massive still because of the countermeasure system, the anti-vibration system. Because it's a rowing device, it has a different movement than the other exercise devices. So this will give us more understanding of exercise devices like that, and is really more of a step on the way to an exploration exercise device than the actual end product, I would say.
And I'll just add, we are planning to launch it on a Northrop Grumman cargo vehicle, which has a little bit more space. You can launch different pieces and parts of it, but yeah, there's quite a bit of mass associated with its isolation system.
So it's not going.
And one more in the room before we go to phones.
Hi, thank you. Ken Kramer of Space Up Close. Thanks for all doing this, and good luck. My question actually is for all three of you. You mentioned, Andreas, this new ultrasound device. So a question I've had for a while since the Crew-11 medical evacuation is, are you guys reevaluating what medicines and what medical devices you should have on board the ISS? And would your device have helped Crew-11 at all in analyzing whatever was wrong? Thanks.
Why don't I kick us off here? I think I'll take it. But I'll just say, we are continually looking at the various risks on board. What are the risks medically for our crew members? There's a large programmatic risk associated with having to bring home crews early, and we're just continually looking at the complement of equipment that we have on board. So there is the specific item that he's talking about is more of an experiment to see about remote guidance and that type of thing. It's not specifically something that we are manifesting on board for any particular risk. It's more just overall risk, I'd say, reduction for multiple things. Understanding blood flow in space is critical because it doesn't operate quite exactly the same. We're just continually looking at all the various risks, and so his remote guidance types of techniques are important for exploration. Really, there's not been a very specific targeted something associated with his device that is going to be used associated with that return.
And I would just say I watch the ISS program operate all the time, and they're trying to all the time look at the risk of the human body in space. If you just think about the population on Earth, everybody in this room has a little different blood physiology. Everybody has a little bit different metabolism. Everybody's different, and drugs work differently on all of us here. And so if you think about what we're doing right now in ISS, flying more and more people, you get a wider population of how people behave in microgravity for these long-duration flights. We tend to try to fly more and more diagnostic capability to augment what we have here on the ground. Here we have wonderful medical capability, but again, for Mars someday, we're going to need these long-duration flights where people are in microgravity for over a year. And so ISS is really a pathfinder for that.
Is there any specific medication or device you can point to that you would like to have up there?
Well, there's an entire hospital's worth of equipment. Frankly, really, there is. But practically speaking, like I said, we are looking at all kinds of things to upgrade our medical complement, but there's a lot of things that are just not practical. And so that's when you need to bring astronauts home from space if you think you need something that you can imagine. There's a lot of devices in a hospital setting that are available that are just not practical to send up on board ISS. So there's not really one specific thing I'd say that I'd like to claim here, but we're continually trying to see what we can do to downscale equipment and manifest it on board just for risk mitigation purposes.
Thank you. We're going to go to the phones. Irene Klotz from Aviation Week.
Good morning. Do you hear me all right?
We have you.
Thank you. I have two questions. First, for Dina, do you have an update on the status of the repairs to the launch pad at Baikonur following the damage from after the MS-28 launch? And probably for Steve, are there any schedule issues that might need to be deconflicted with Crew-12 launch and ongoing work on Artemis for the wet dress? Thanks.
All right. So relative to the Baikonur Cosmodrome launch pad for Progress and Soyuz, of course, that repairs under the guidance of Roscosmos, and so I don't have any more details to share. I'll say that they are still targeting March 22nd. We've not heard of any schedule changes associated with that. So, Roscosmos will have more detail on how they're progressing with that, but I'll just give you from a schedule standpoint, nothing has changed. So,
yeah, on the busy activities here at the range, we've got a couple things we're watching. One, United Launch Alliance has a Vulcan launch for Space Force also on Thursday. So we'll work with them. If the weather doesn't look good for us, we'll give them an opportunity to go fly their mission and accomplish their mission as well. And then we're watching and talking to Artemis every single day. We did that, as you heard, prior to their wet dress rehearsal. We'll watch what they're doing. Right now, we don't see conflicts this week, but we continue to talk to them all the time. They've made progress at changing out a few seals, and they're doing some testing on those seals, and we'll make sure that we have an integrated operation where we can go fly. And Crew-12, since we have a vehicle at the pad that's ready to go, and Dragon field with hypergulls, and then we'll work them in as well when they're ready to go do their wet dress.
Thank you. And our next question comes from Stephen Clark at Ars Technica. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, Stephen Clark from Ars Technica. Thanks for taking my question. I think my question's probably for Steve or Dina about the upcoming Starliner cargo mission. Is that still expected to launch, I think, in the April timeframe? At one point it was expected to fly in that timeframe. Is it still expected in that timeframe? And also, where do things stand right now in the investigation of what happened on the crew test flight, and what kind of information or data do you hope to learn from this upcoming flight to be able to certify? Thanks.
I'll start and see if Dina has anything to add. So right now we're continuing to have a no earlier than April launch date, but we're really driven by closing out all the technical work we need to do ahead of that flight. We've made great progress on, in potential, the helium system. Remember we had in the service module, we had helium leaks on that flight. We've changed out the seals with a seal that's resistant to nitrogen tetroxide vapor. And so that's been through our board, and the IFA has been closed out. We did hot fire the crew module thrusters on the vehicle we plan to fly for Starliner 1. All 12 of those thrusters were hot fired in the crew and cargo processing facility for Boeing. Those are all worked good. And then we're continuing to finish, as we talked about last fall, we did an immense amount of testing at the White Sands test facility with an integrated doghouse and 2 thrusters, what we called single engine Delta Qual 1 and 2. We're taking all that data right now in the process of building a model to try to predict thruster behavior. That model has been shared with NASA. We're going through all that modeling right now. And And so when we get through that and get to a point where we're comfortable in predicting thruster performance, then we'll go move forward and look toward a launch date. But again, we have a lot of data to go work through to get ready to go fly. And really the purpose of Starliner 1 is to validate the changes that we made. If you think about in the service module, we've made changes to draw heat away from each individual reaction control system thruster. We've made changes to seals to keep the plume from the OMAC, the orbital maneuvering engines, from going back into there. We have instrumentation in the doghouses to measure temperature throughout each of the doghouses. And so we've done a number of changes. Really, Starliner 1 is about validating those changes in the flight environment, collecting that data, and then moving forward for the next flight, which would be planned to be a crew rotation mission.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Andrea Leinfelder at Houston Chronicle. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thank you so much. This question is for Dina. During the Crew-12 news conference, Jessica Meir mentioned that the space station crew will talk to the Artemis II crew. I'm curious, why are they going to be talking, and what will they discuss? Thank you.
You can imagine they're probably talking about their various views that each of them is seeing. Their Earth views probably look a lot different from the Artemis II viewpoint and ISS viewpoint. So we'll see, their mission overlap and how that conversation takes place. But I'm sure that as good friends, they're also probably going to just be excited to talk to each other from different parts of the cosmos.
Thank you. And next, we have Robert Perlman from Collect Space. Go ahead, Robert.
Hi, thank you. Robert Perlman with CollectSpaceAndSpace.com. For Bill Gerstenmaier, did the bearings work drive the timing of the removal of the crew access arm on 39A? And is there other work planned for that pad that would preclude SpaceX from reinstalling it when that work is done? Or why is it being kept on the ground, and where is it being physically stored or worked on?
Yeah, we're going to remove the arm, and then the bearings, the arm physically has to come down to get to the bearings. These are the bearings that actually hold the arm to the tower. They're unique to 39A. They're very different than they are for the arm that's on 40. And to physically get access to those, the arm needs to be removed. Those bearings have to come out, and they have to be reinstalled. We'll do that work at the Kennedy Space Center. And the intent there is we don't need to put the arm back up because, again, as I described, we have, when we get a call up for a mission and we have to go fly a mission, if it requires that, we have plenty of time to get the arm back up. That's the easy piece, putting it up. You'll also see a lot of work going on at 39A. That's to work for Starship. That doesn't impact our ability to launch from the pad. We're careful that we keep those things separate, and we're ready to go. But again, I think this is just the right way to get to the arm. There was no way we could repair these bearings in place. We looked at it. We put some epoxy in place. We put some diverters in place. It was a Band-Aid kind of fix for those bearings, but the right thing to do is get those bearings replaced in an environment on the ground, make some upgrades to them, and then we'll be ready to go put the arm back up when it's time to go fly, if we need to go fly.
Thank you. Our next question comes from TJ Mascaro, Epoch Times. Go ahead, TJ.
Good morning. Thank you so much. My question's for Andy. With the increased launch traffic we're starting to see here in Florida, and with the increased interest you're seeing with people wanting to be ESA astronauts, I was wondering if the ESA will ever develop and start flying its own crewed capsule and crewed missions.
So just, if I understood the question right, the question is, will ESA develop a crew capsule? Was that the question?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a good question, but it's something that we are certainly looking at, and if everything goes according to plan, it's a potential thing that we might bring to our member states. So the European Space Agency consists of 23 European member states, and they are the ones that actually set European space policy. And it happens every 3 years at our ministerial conference. The last one was in November last year. And so the next one is in November 2028. And this is potentially one of the topics that we would bring up to discuss with our member states. But it's still a ways off in the future. But certainly it's something that we are discussing.
Thank you. Our next question is going to come in from Jeff Faust from Space News. Go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, good morning. A couple of follow-ups for Steve from some earlier questions. One, if the weather improves for Thursday, does Crew-12 have priority on the range over the ULA Vulcan launch, or is there a way to squeeze both of them in, given I think they're pretty close together in terms of the time of the morning they're scheduled to launch? And then for Starliner, what point do you have to make a decision on what vehicle flies the next crew rotation mission after Crew-12? How late could you fly Starliner 1 and still have enough time to look at the data from that flight to decide it's available for that next crewed mission to the station towards the end of the year? Thanks.
Yeah, to address the first question, right now we Crew-12 has priority on the range over the Vulcan launch, and that's what we want to do today a little bit, is look at the weather, talk to them, see their readiness, and if the weather's not looking very favorable, we would potentially give up the 12th for them to allow them to go fly. So the way the range scheduling works, we had the 11th and the 12th as our two prime dates, and so we have priority right now. But the way we work across all the users at the range, we do this sort of thing all the time. And SpaceX does as well with their flights. We try to optimize the schedule so everybody gets to go fly. In terms of the next crew rotation mission, we have not decided yet. In the fall, it could be either a Crew 13 mission or Starliner 2. We want to work through and get through Starliner 1 into the summer time frame and then see where we're at before. So we have some time to decide. We have crews in training for both missions, and we will have a little bit more time to decide into the summer. So,
thank you. We're going to come back here in the room, and Will.
Hi, thanks for allowing another question. Question to Bill Gerstenmaier and to Dina as well. One of the experiments that Jessica Meir mentioned that's going to be conducted is demonstration of landing on the moon, and she was specific to mention that this is vehicle agnostic, that it's not directly related to either Starship or Blue Moon. But I wonder to Bill, what learnings or is SpaceX taking away from work like this? And to Dina, are there future experiments planned on station that will directly feed into the Artemis landing profile specifically? Thanks.
Yeah, again, I think we recognize the microgravity environment is very different than a 1G environment here on the Earth. So if we can use the crews to demonstrate some things, see how operations go in space, we can start applying those to various other regimes to look at control authority, layout of other things. We're also going to be building for Starship essentially a one-gravity a lunar lander mock-up, which will be high fidelity, and crews will get a chance to experiment and use that as part of the HLS program. So that's a pretty exciting thing that's coming up. But again, I think we want to take advantage of all these flights, take advantage of space station, learn everything we can as we continue to keep moving, human presence further into the solar system. As Andreas talked about, what we can do today in low Earth orbit, where we have pretty rapid communication back and forth, is very different than what we're going to do when we go longer distances away from the Earth. So what we can learn off a space station and how we can advance and get prepared for the future is tremendously important. So I think this is a good example of one of the things that we'll get to do on station that will definitely carry forward to future programs.
And I'll just pile it on that we absolutely are excited about this experiment. And, we have over the years done experiments like this to test out in microgravity, is your reaction time the same? Are you able to do exactly the same thing that you did on Earth? What parts of training might be different, or anything that we would do differently after microgravity environment to go and then land a spacecraft? So we've done these, like I said, some variations of them, and learning each time some new things. And so I can envision as we ramp up to landing on the moon that there will be additional experiments. And that's one of the reasons we fly ISS, is to try to use it as a springboard for exploration and doing as much testing as we can on board ISS to ensure that we have the best operational plan we can for any spacecraft that will land on the moon or go to Mars. So.
Thank you. We're going to go to the phones for the next question. Jonathan Seary from Fox News.
Thanks so much for doing this. This question's for whoever wants to talk about backup opportunities. I believe the one on Friday is 5:15. What opportunities do you have going into the weekend and perhaps early next week?
Yeah, I'll talk about the opportunities. Let's see. So we do have a Friday, February 13th, 5:15 a.m. Eastern. We would dock at about 3:15 on Saturday. The Saturday launch opportunity is what we call a long phasing. So it takes quite a number of hours to get to ISS. It's around 42 to 44 hours. We would look at that one very carefully because the Dragon is a great spacecraft. It has a limited finite ability to be in space, and so we want to make sure we optimize the amount of time we spend on the front versus the time we could spend on the back end. And then we have opportunities Sunday, the 15th, 16th, and 17th as well if needed. So we have a good string of opportunities. Every fourth day or so is the long phase, and so we just got to look at that one carefully. Hopefully the weather cooperates and we can get off this week. We'll just take it one step at a time. I think we've been here before, watching the weather up the East Coast in the winter when cold fronts and low pressure systems move through and cause the wind and waves to increase. So,
thank you. Let's come into the room.
Hi, Ken Kramer, Space Up Close. Thanks again. For Dina and Andreas. Andreas, tell us about the future of European astronauts going to the ISS. A couple years ago, you had 3 in a row. I'm wondering what's the future for that, as well as when you might expect an Artemis launch. And for Dina, I think last week you mentioned a really interesting science experiment to me about these IV bags that you're gonna make, try and make. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And what is the source of the water? Is it from the UPA, I guess? And what kind of ground testing you've done to give you confidence that this is going to work? It's really
after Sophie, we have Raphael up next. His exact mission still is a little bit up in the air, I think, but I think in 2027, 2028, he will be the next ESA astronaut to fly on a long-duration mission. And then, we're hoping for potentially a third long-duration mission prior to the end of ISS, so potentially in 2029. And of course, I mentioned a little bit our 2022 class of ESA astronauts. What was also unique about that selection is that we selected a group of what we call reserve astronauts. We've already seen 2 of the reserve astronauts fly as what we call project astronauts. That was Marcus Wandt from Sweden on Axiom 3 and Sławomir Uznanski from Poland on Axiom 4. And I think we can probably also expect to see some more ESA project astronauts fly on future private astronaut missions. So there are many new flight opportunities in this commercial world. And of course, we're also extremely excited to work as a partner with NASA on Artemis. And, first step is Artemis 2. We'll see how Artemis 2 goes, and then when Artemis 3, 4, and 5 come along. But that's certainly also on the horizon. And we're, of course, very excited to one day see a European astronaut on an Artemis mission as well.
Okay, and then relative to the IV fluid bag experiment, if you didn't hear the previous discussion, I had mentioned that what we're trying to do is to create IV medical fluid bags for potential use in space. On a Mars trip, for example, it's so long that your IV fluid will expire before the end of the trip. And you, without knowing what type of medical events you might have to launch a number of them, and so you have a lot of mass and volume to take up. So it would be better if we would just be able to plug just an empty bag into our potable water system and then fill it and filter it appropriately so that it would have all of the I'd say microbes filtered out, anything that you wouldn't want to insert into your medical fluid bag. So in order to do that, we're taking it out of the potable water system. So this would be the type of water that has potentially been processed through the urine processor and then through a series of other processors. But this particular experiment is trying to look at this filtration that takes it to an even finer level so that it even filters out all the bacteria and everything else that would be untenable for medical IV purposes. So we've done a version of this in the past, and this is a little bit of a different type of filtration system. We're trying to refine it even more, and I believe it might be smaller as well. And so just trying to get our processes down. And then at the end, we'll bring a medical bag home, and we'll test it, and we'll say, is it medical grade or not, and or are there any upgrades that we'd like to do in the future so that we have this capability.
How long does it take How long does it take to do this experiment, to collect the water in this bag?
I don't know for sure, but I would guess it would be very quick. It's a filtration device. It's not something like a large machine that it has to go through. It's more like a simple filtration device. So I would guess, a matter of minutes, a couple of hours to set it up. I don't know. We can find that out for you.
Next, let's go to the phones. David Denault from About Space Today News. Go ahead, David.
My question is for Andreas. Yesterday, Sophie was really excited, and she said, well, with this device, she had a rope to pull down. You said it's like a bicycle. It's like a rowing machine. How big is this and the applications for long-duration missions? How long is it? How does it work? But specifically, step by step, what are the elements that the astronauts will use?
So it's a platform, probably 3 feet wide, so that you can stand on it. And it has a variety of modes. You can fold out what essentially is a flywheel, and that allows you to do rowing exercises, but also to do cycle ergometer exercises. So it uses some of the same technology that's used on Cevis. And then what's ingenious is that on the platform itself are various places where you can hook in bars, ropes, other things so that you can do squats, you can do bench press, overhead press, curls, even a rope pulling exercise. So it's very, very versatile, and it will be very interesting to see it performing in space.
Thank you. And we're going to go to Adrian Leinfelder from the Houston Chronicle. Go ahead, Andrea.
Thanks for the follow-up question. Dina, I just wanted to ask this again. Jessica made it sound like there was a scheduled time to talk to Artemis 2. So I'm wondering, is there a practical mission reason they're talking, or is it just to say hi? Thanks.
There's no practical mission reason why that's necessary, but I do think as Steve highlighted, this is a very unique, unusual time in human spaceflight where we have human beings orbiting the Earth, and then we'll also have them orbiting the Moon concurrently. And so I do think it's appropriate and sounds like a great opportunity for them to like I said, discuss the Moon views and the Earth views that they each have.
Thank you. And next we have Jonathan Siri at Fox News. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thanks so much for the second question. I'm really interested in the augmented reality ultrasound that you're going to be testing on this mission. What are the advantages of ultrasound? And on a hypothetical trip to Mars, what are the potential uses that it would be put through? Thank you.
Should I take that one? I'll just say, we do ultrasound. We use ultrasound quite a bit on the space station. It's a lot like Earth. You're trying to do diagnostics without, anything that's super intrusive. So it's a really great tool to look and kind of understand the human physiology. And human physiology is different in microgravity. And the specific experiment that Andy was talking about with augmented reality, as you said, one of the things we're trying to do is avoid having a remote guider on the Earth. So you can have very long transmission times where if you were talking to your doctor and you asked him a question and you tried to show him an image from your own ultrasound and it took 20 minutes to respond, you can imagine this would be a very difficult operation to try to kind of go back and forth. So we're just trying to increase the capability that the crew members have on board for diagnosing their own issues. And this is a great tool for doing so. If you had anything to add.
No, I mean, this ultrasound is one of the few devices we have to look inside the body. We don't have any, unfortunately, mobile X-ray devices or MR scanners. So ultrasound, as Dina said, is a very important diagnostic tool on the ISS.
And we have time for one more question this morning. We're going to come here in the room. To Will.
Hi, thanks for allowing one more follow-up. Question to Steve and to Bill Gerstenmaier. Given that there's just a handful of planned years left for the International Space Station, as you look towards the future of the commercial stations and future NASA astronauts flying to those, I wonder, are there any additional experiments planned for Dragon that would allow for cooperation with these future commercial stations? Any tests of communication devices or additional advances that you want to see in these last few years that you have of Dragon going back and forth to the ISS? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll let Bill start, and then I'll follow on.
Yeah, in some of our private missions, we've used, we call it a plaser. It's essentially a laser that we communicate with our Starlink satellite networks in the trunk of Dragon. So I think that's a device we're looking at using potentially more and more. We may add that. It can also relieve us from some TDRS communication requirements we have with Dragon. So that's something I think we'd like to look at the future. We're starting to use that now more and more on our second stages with Starlink. We have a mini Starlink antenna that flies on those flights from Vandenberg, where it essentially relieves us of ground coverage and allows us to communicate with our Starlink network. So I think we're starting to tie our Starlink network and communications more and more into other activities that essentially are giving a continuous communication link for these potential future commercial space stations that are in orbit or planned to be in orbit.
And I would say, as we look toward the future of these stations, as Bill said, the communication, the TDRS network, we know would not be there. That's one thing. We'll have to look at how we approach and dock. We today rely on the communication systems on ISS to close the link between the visiting vehicle and station, right? We pass data, we pass GPS data and other things. So we've got to start thinking through that a little bit, how we will do that with the commercial stations. We've got different ideas and concepts of what we might do there. And then when you dock, once the vehicle's docked, we have to think about, ISS has an incredible system of exchanging air back and forth between vehicles. And, you want to condition the vehicle that's there, our crewed vehicle. So we got to think about that a little bit. So we're in the middle of thinking about all those things, but specifically for Dragon, the plaser experiment that Bill talked about is the one that we've demonstrated so far.
Thank you, and that is going to wrap up our questions for this morning's pre-launch news conference for Crew-12. You can follow all continuing progress on the countdown and on the mission on NASA's social media channels, including at Space Station and at NASA. We'll also have continuing coverage at www.nasa.gov/commercialcrew, and we will have a broadcast ahead of the launch of the Crew-12 mission. And for those just joining us, the Crew-12 mission has been targeted for February 12th, no earlier than February 12th, and that is dependent on the weather, which launch and flight teams will be monitoring very closely. For now, thank you very much for joining us. Go NASA, go SpaceX, and go Crew-12. Thank you.